All right, I'm doing a live right now on day 6. Day 6 of the trial. What's up, everybody? So I got the live chat going here. All right. Eric Holder trial update. Just wrapped up day 6, and I'll give you guys a quick rundown of what happened today for day 6, and then I'll take some questions, and that should wrap up the Eric trial update for day 6. How can we watch the trial? The trial is not televised. Only the opening statements, the closing statements, and the verdict. Judge H. Clay Jack made that ruling, so that's what it is. Oh, Don Z TV. Don Z TV. Don Z actually took the advice that I gave everyone in the live yesterday. If you're suspicious of this trial, if you got questions about this trial, if you think there's something fishy going on, come to the courtroom. You can meet the prosecutor, you can meet the defense attorney, you can meet the lead investigator and ask any question you want. And that's the beautiful part. That's one of the beautiful parts of our criminal justice system, is that the courtrooms are open to the public. You can come down and talk about, ask anything you want. All right, so we're going to do a quick rundown of what happened in court today. So the first witness for the prosecution today was a LAPD officer named Gilberto Galaxio, Glaxioa. And he was a gang expert that specialized in the Rolling 60s Crips. And he testified that there's 1,200 members broken up into several different cliques. He identified Front Hood, Overhills, BG or Brian Hurst, and Gutter Kids. They had an exhibit of the map of the hood. And on this map, they had the hood going from Overhill to the west, Western to the east. They actually had it south of Florence. They had it going to 70. They had the hood going pretty big. They had the hood going down, I believe, to 79th Street. And to the north, they had the hood going all the way to 48th Street. They completely ignored the VNGs and the Rolling 50s. They just had the whole map go all the way to 48th Street. And that cop basically said, this is Rolling 60s hood turf. So according to that map, they wiped off the VNGs off the map. So that's one thing I noticed while I was listening to this guy testify with that map. And then he got into John McKinney started asking the gang expert, the gang cop, about snitching and what does that mean? And he said various ways. If you call 911, you can be considered a snitch, all the way to testifying in court. But what was really interesting, he said, John McKinney asked the gang cop, is it fair to say anyone giving information to the police is a snitch? And he said yes. And then he asked, even if it's a little kid, and the gang cop said, could be. And we all know that 99% of gang members, at least the ones I know, they're not going to call a little kid that talks to the police or gives the police information a snitch. And I guess he didn't want to say that. He didn't want to say, nah, he doesn't want, in these gang cases, a cop never wants to say that some gang members or most gang members have a line they won't cross. So he used the word could be. But I don't know anyone that would say a little kid. A little kid is a rat too. But he testified to Gang Cop that he patrolled for 5 years, and that he has 17 years as a cop, and that he actually had many run-ins with Nipsey Hussle over the years. He said that, and he had run-ins with Eric Holder. When asked how many times have you met Nipsey Hussle out there as a patrol cop, he said 50 times for Nipsey Hussle, and he said 10 times for Eric Holder. He also said that he had contacts with Nipsey Hussle before he was famous and after he was famous. So this would be throughout the 17 years of his career as an LAPD cop. And there was some cross-examination by Jansen. He asked him, at what age did you first encounter Eric Holder? And he said sometime when he was a teenager. And he asked, how old was the last time you met him? The cop didn't know. And do you know him to be a member of the 60s? He said, yeah. And he actually said that Nipsey Hussle and Eric Holder were both self-admitted gang members, which, it's possible. And then this is where we got the cop to tell us the boundaries of the 60s, because when the prosecutor had the map up there on the projector, he didn't ask him any questions about what streets it was. So the defense attorney asked him, break down this map with the streets. So 48th to the north, 74th to the south, west to Overhill. West to Overhill and east to Western. And definitely the east to Western, that's pretty accurate. West to Overhill, actually, you can go a little bit more west of Overhill. South to 74th Street, I mean, you're almost getting into Inglewood right there. I always gave their neighborhood south to Florence. Yeah, there's a little bit of activity 1 block past Florence on 71st. He gave it 74th, but then north to 48th Street, that means he just wiped out the VNGs. And then they had a big M on the middle of the map for Slauson and Crenshaw, where the Marathon store was. And they asked about, is it a dangerous area? The defense attorney wanted to get him to say that murder is a crime they do. And he said yes. Intimidating witnesses. Do the 60s intimidate witnesses? 99% of trials, when you're asking a gang cop, do they do these crimes? It's always going to be, yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. But because the tables are slightly turned in this case, when the defense attorney asked him, do they commit witness intimidation? The gang cop actually said, sometimes. He wasn't so quick to say, yes, they do. He says in the 17 years, he had a couple of cases, but it's very low. According to his testimony, it's very low. But when I'm in these gang cases, man, those cops are like, yes, they do this, they do that, they do this. But they're being a little bit careful of the way they testify because, the high-profile nature. So he asked, do they do drive-bys? Are there shot callers? This is a really interesting part about the shot callers. He asked, are there shot callers? The defense attorney, he said, I don't want you to name any shot callers, but does this hood have shot callers? And he basically said, yeah, there's about 10 shot callers in the 60s. And they showed a bunch of exhibits of Nipsey Hussle throwing up gang signs, because the defense attorney is really trying to show that not only was Nipsey Hussle a 60s back in the day, a 60s as he was a music artist currently, and as an artist himself. So he has a 60s past, a 60s presence, and an artist presence. So he showed pictures of Nipsey when he was young, throwing up gang signs. Then he showed a photo of him throwing gang signs very recently, and just to establish that, he through and through, he was a rolling 60s. And what else? Then he asked him a hypothetical, assume that a rolling 60s has been out the hood for several years. No one has seen him for a while. He shows up one day and is accused of being a snitch and told that there's paperwork. and he needs to clear it up. Being away for a while is indicative that he was snitching and staying away so that nothing would happen to him. That was a question that he was asking the cop. And the cop basically said, well, the way he interpreted that conversation was that Nipsey was trying to give him some advice to take care of it, as opposed to accusing him of being a snitch. So the defense attorney and the gang cop kind of went back and forth on that. So I guess the defense attorney wanted to establish he was being accused of being a snitch, Eric Holder was. The gang cop was trying to say, not necessarily. He could have been just trying to give him some brotherly advice that, hey, there's a rumor going on, that there's paperwork. I haven't read it, but you should take care of it. And they kind of went back and forth a little bit on that. And then they threw up some pictures of all of Eric Holder's gang tattoos. And that was pretty much it for the gang cop. Then after the gang cop, the gang detective, I mean, not the gang detective, but the homicide detective, that the lead homicide detective on this case, Detective Cedric Washington, I got him down as witness number 17. He started to testify about, his role in this case. And they started talking about Rimpau. And it was like, have you been trying to get Rimpau to come to court? And Detective Washington said, as of a couple minutes ago, I was working on it. So this is something that they're putting a lot of resources in, trying to track him down, trying to bring him to court. And I mentioned in the video that I did earlier, which I'm probably going to delete because the quality wasn't that, was terrible actually. But there's a bench warrant for Rimpau for the amount of $500,000 for not showing up in court after he was subpoenaed. So one of the interesting things that Detective Washington testified about was that Eric Holder was armed with a gun in his front right pocket when he walks into the Master Burger. Although you can't see it, based on his experience, based on his knowledge, based on the imprint and the bulge, he was armed at that time. So this whole idea of maybe walking back to the car, getting a gun, I don't know how we look at that now, because everyone's been opining that he went back to the car, got a gun. But when he walked into Master Burger, he was armed. So that also means that when he was in that group talking, he was armed. If you believe Cedric Washington's testimony that there was a gun in his right front pocket. Then they talked about Rimpau. They played the video of Rimpau at the scene, shaking his hand, and then running after the shots fired. And John McKinney asked Detective Washington, "Do you see Rimpau running?" He said, "Yes, he was running northeast with the white shirt and shorts." And then Prosecutor McKinney said, "He is fast." Would you agree? And Detective Washington said, "He looks very fast." I got a kick out of that. They're throwing a few jabs at Rimpau. But yeah, there was some serious conversation about getting him into custody and dragging him into court. So then they broke for lunch, came back from lunch, and Detective Washington continued. Detective Washington continued. And the testimony about Eric Holder having a gun in the front right pocket actually happened after lunch. There was an objection by Jansen, because he was objecting that this is all speculation, because you don't see a gun, but you're allowing this detective to testify that he did have a gun on him based on the bulge and based on the impression that it left. The judge, they had a sidebar, and the judge allowed that testimony to go forward. But he emphasized it's just his opinion. That testimony was not to be taken as fact. Just based on his opinion, Eric Holder had a gun in his front right pocket. So that's pretty much it. What else? On cross-examination, defense attorney Jansen wanted to emphasize the lack of cooperation that this case has been receiving by the witnesses, because he's trying to emphasize that there's a level of nervousness. People don't want to testify. There's all these snitching allegations. People are worried, are scared for their lives. So the first thing was mentioning this witness named Melody James. Melody James. She hasn't come to court. She hasn't testified, but apparently Detective Washington subpoenaed Melody James. She did not want to come to court. She was very upset that she got subpoenaed. And ultimately, the prosecutor decided not to use her for whatever reason. So we don't know anything about Melody James in terms of this trial because she didn't testify. But the defense attorney wanted to emphasize that people just don't want to come to court for a variety of reasons. Their lives, they're nervous. What else? He also emphasized that Shermy Villanueva, was he reluctant to come to court? And he answered yes. Was Carrie Latham reluctant to come to court? The detective said yes. And obviously Evan McKenzie doesn't want to come to court. And then there was this talk that Ms. Nicholson actually received a telephone threat prior to her testimony, and they ended up requesting that she be able to come into the court through a rear door or through some other door, not through the public way, as a safety precaution. So the defense attorney was just trying to show that there's all these dangers, there's these risks, there's this reluctance of anyone wanting to participate in this case. And on redirect, John McKinney said that even though Melody James was reluctant, she ultimately decided to come to court, and she did answer the subpoena. But yeah, she didn't want to participate. So then after that, the next witness was the coroner. When the doctor came to testify, his name is Nguyen, N-G-Y-E-N, Lawrence Nguyen. The first thing we learned, there was a little bit of testimony outside of the presence of the jury. The defense attorney wanted to ask a few questions, and it turns out he didn't actually do the autopsy on Nipsey Hussle. He has all the reports and all the information, so he will be testifying about the autopsy, but he didn't do it. And then eventually the attorneys had an issue. They had to go in the chambers to talk to the judge, and they just decided not to have the coroner testify today. That was all done outside the presence of the media and of the jury. So then after the judge excuses the coroner till next week, the last witness is a guy named Michael Ramirez, he is John McKinney's assistant. He's his paralegal. And he testified about pulling up Eric Holder's records, and we learned that he has one conviction from a March 28, 2012 arrest in Marina del Rey, where he got charged with 2 counts, a count of possessing a gun and a count of being in possession of drugs. And when he went to court, he pled guilty to the gun count. They dismissed the other count. He pled guilty to carrying a loaded firearm in public. He was given probation, and basically he has one felony conviction that goes back to 2012. And that was pretty much for the day. There was no rim paw. We didn't get testimony from the coroner, and we're back in court on Tuesday morning, not Monday, but Tuesday morning will be the 7th day of testimony. And I'll take a few questions before I wrap it up. Any questions? I didn't see any of the chat while I was going over my notes, so I didn't see any of the chat. So let's see here. What do we got here? Long live Nip. You think he'll walk? Well, when you say walk, the term walk means you're found not guilty. There is no way he's going to be found not guilty of this case because the defense conceded that he shot Nipsey during the opening statements. So that means he's guilty of something, and that's for the jury to decide whether he's guilty of first degree, second degree, or manslaughter. And I'll also add that the reason why there's no court on Monday is because they're going to they're going to be doing jury instructions. The two attorneys, they got to write up all these jury instructions so they can give it to the jury sometime later next week. And in those jury instructions, they're going to be directed to what counts you can find Eric Holder guilty. And you're going to see first degree murder and manslaughter. But because manslaughter is going to be on the table, you got to throw second degree in there. So that's going to be for the jury to decide. So the long answer to your question is there's no way he's walking from this. He's going to be found guilty of something. Will Eric take the stand? No. Well, the defense attorney hasn't indicated that Eric's going to take the stand. In fact, he just said that he only has 2 witnesses next week. Next Tuesday, we're going to hear his 2 witnesses. And guess who one of his witnesses is going to be? It's going to be a witness that's being recalled that was a prosecution witness. How many men and women are on the jury pool? That is a question that I answered before. I don't have that one committed to memory, but I got it here in my notes, and I will answer that for you shortly. Yeah, Cowboy is being recalled by Jansen, by the defense attorney, because after hearing Bernita's testimony about that conversation, it's just natural that now the defense attorney has some questions for Cowboy, because we learned a whole lot of new information about that conversation that Cowboy did not mention at all. So that's why he is being recalled. He is being recalled by the defense. Eric got big now. Yeah, Eric does look a whole lot bigger than he was before. But in terms of the jury, the demographics of the jury, and you got a pen over there you can throw me? You got a pen over there? You got a pen you can throw me? No? All right, I'll just count right here on my thing. You want to know how many guys, how many girls. And remember, there are 17 jurors. 12 jurors will be deciding this case. There's 5 alternates. So far, not one single juror has dropped out during this trial. So all 17 are still present. Let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 female jurors, and then that means there's 6 males. I don't know which ones are the alternates and which ones are not the alternates, unfortunately. Somebody said Cowboy hasn't snitched. Okay, I see a long question here. Why would you say the streets don't call kids snitches? Because most people from the streets don't really consider civilians snitches. And the kid, I'm assuming most kids are civilians. So basically, if an old lady gets robbed and she decides to call the police, most people aren't going to call that old lady a snitch. You know, some may, most won't. And you know, this term snitching and telling, there is no universal definition that we would all agree upon. We cannot agree upon what snitching is, what snitching isn't, who's a snitch, who's not a snitch. You know, so no one agrees on that. No one agrees. Someone just put here in the chat that Cowboy didn't snitch. Okay. You're entitled to that. So real quick wrap up. Real quick wrap up. Real quick. That's like a tongue twister. Real quick was the first witness for the prosecution Today was the gang cop from the LAPD 77th Division. His name was Gilberto Glaxio, Glaxioa. He's been a LAPD officer for 17 years, and he has quote-unquote extensive experience with the Rolling 60s. And then the next witness was Detective Cedric Washington, who's been an LAPD, employed with the LAPD for 27 years. And he's also worked with the FBI, the DEA. You know, he's been around a long time. And him and his partner were the lead detectives in this case. His partner testified a couple days ago, and he testified today on day 6. That's Cedric Washington. And then we had the coroner, Lawrence Nguyen. Last name is spelled Nguyen. But because of some issues that the attorneys were having about the coroner, which were done outside our presence, he came off the stand and was ordered to come back on Tuesday morning. And then our fourth witness today was Michael Ramirez, who's basically the prosecutor's paralegal. And I think the most important information that he testified about was pulling up Eric Holder's criminal record, rap sheet. And basically he has a felony conviction from March 28th, 2012 for possessing a gun and possessing drugs. And that case number is SA080407 for anybody that wants to look that up. SA080407 out of Marina Del Rey, LA County Sheriffs. And he was the last witness. Is the jury sequestered? No, the jury is absolutely not sequestered. But every day at the end of the end of the session, the judge does remind the jurors not to look at the internet, not to go on social media, not to read anything about this case, so that they can have an unbiased mind when listening to this evidence. Why is Cowboy having to testify for a second time? Gene Canica. The reason why Cowboy is testifying a second time is because he is being recalled by the defense. Now, Cowboy is a prosecution witness, but the defense attorney has the right to recall any of the prosecutor's witnesses if he or she feels that there's a reason that they can get more information out of him. And I believe after hearing Bernita's testimony, the defense wants to ask Cowboy some more questions about that conversation between Eric Holder and Nipsey Hussle. So that's why he's going to testify a second time. But that second testimony is going to be limited to what was already testified about. I don't believe that Jansen has the ability to go outside of what was discussed to ask other questions. So there are some restrictions to what he can ask him on this recall. Did Cowboy detail anything incriminating? He absolutely did. He actually identified Eric Holder as the shooter. You know, he said that he ran out the store after he heard the gunshots because he was inside the Marathon store eating his lunch that Ingrid Castone dropped off. And as he runs out the store, he sees Nipsey on the ground and he sees Eric Holder running past Master Burger to the alley going south. So, yeah, that's pretty incriminating, don't you think? Give me a thumbs up if that's some incriminating testimony. Give me a thumbs down if it's not. How many black people are on the jury? There are 2 black women on the jury. There are no black men. So there are 2. And I'm not sure if those 2 black women are part of the main 12 or if they're alternates. Thumbs up that was pretty incriminating, huh? Yeah. So someone said Cowboy ain't snitch. He just telling what Nip said out of his mouth. They trying to play Nip. and Cowboy not having it. Well, I don't know. They're not trying to play nip. He did name Eric Holder as the shooter. Yes, he absolutely named Eric Holder as the shooter. Even though he didn't see the shooting. What he said was he ran out the store after he heard the gunshots, nips on the ground, and he sees Eric Holder running away. I'm not sure if he says he sees Eric Holder running away with the gun in his hand. I'd have to go back. I'm actually going to do a video just on Cowboy's testimony. Don't know if I'm gonna do that tomorrow. We're not back in court till Tuesday. I'll try to knock that out Friday. So I don't remember if Cowboy said he remembered seeing Eric Holder running with the gun or not the gun, but he definitely said he saw Eric Holder running away. They are trying to get Eric Holder for second degree, not first degree. Well, ultimately, the goal of the defense is to try to get a manslaughter because that carries the least amount of time in prison. You know, if the defense can get a manslaughter, if the jury finds Eric Holder guilty of manslaughter, that's actually a victory for the defense. I mean, he still goes to prison, but there's definitely a victory for the defense. TK Kirkland says, I'm about to go find somebody to snitch on right now. Somebody actually thought that was the real TK Kirkland on here, but I don't. That definitely not. How is that snitching? How is that snitching when that's all on the video? You got to have witnesses to strengthen what's on the video. That's why even have witnesses come to court then. Just show the video to the jury and just point out who the people are. Okay, let me ask you this. Would you be comfortable if a prosecutor tried you for a crime and only showed the video? Or would you be comfortable seeing someone tried for a crime and only showed the video, a grainy video at that, and said, this guy did that, look at this grainy video, find him guilty of that? That would not be a fair trial. You need witnesses. You need people to say, I saw him there, he was wearing that, he was wearing this. So that's why witnesses like this are so important to the prosecution. You just hopped on. What I missed? What you missed was a recap of day 6 of testimony. And I was about to just do one quick recap for all those people who just jumped in the room. Today was day 6. The first witness this morning at 10 a.m. was the gang cop for the prosecution. And his name was Alberto Glaxio. No, his name was Gilberto Glaxio, Glaxioa. Sounds like a Oaxacan last name. Can anybody confirm that? Glaxioa. It just got a Oaxacan feel to it. He was the first witness for today. He was a gang cop. He testified that he knew Nip when he was in the hood as a youngster. He knew him as he got older. He's a Rolling 60s Crip gang cop. And then after he testified, Cedric Washington, who was the lead detective on this case. And also, let me add that Cedric Washington is also the prosecutor's assistant in this trial, meaning that he's sitting there every day with the prosecutor. So not only did he lead the investigation on this homicide, he's pretty much quarterbacking this whole trial, to keep it real. I say quarterbacking because these prosecutors really don't know anything. All the information that the prosecutors are fed come from the police. So at the end of the day, if you are happy that Eric Holder got prosecuted and you are happy with the results of this trial, you're going to have to thank Cedric Washington because he not only was he the lead investigator from day 1 of this homicide, he's in court every single day pretty much outlining the whole case for the prosecution. But I don't want to take anything away from John McKinney as a prosecutor. He definitely has to strategize which witnesses to call, what order to put them in, which questions to ask. It's definitely a collaborative effort. But Detective Cedric Washington was the second witness for today. I got him down as witness number 17 for the prosecution. Then after he testified, they called Lawrence Nguyen, which is spelled Nguyen. He was the coroner, but we learned that he didn't do the autopsy on Nipsey Hussle. And for whatever reason, he never testified. He got on the stand. He testified out the presence of the jury for a few minutes. The defense had a few questions. And then they had a meeting in the chambers, the two attorneys and the judge, and they decided to bring him back next week, which he'll be back Tuesday morning. And then the final witness was Michael Ramirez, who is the prosecutor's paralegal. He works for the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. And he basically testified on the rap sheet of Eric Holder. And we learned that his rap sheet includes a March 28th, 2012 arrest in Marina del Rey. He was charged with 2 counts, a count of illegal gun and a count of possession of drugs. They dismissed the drug count. He pled guilty to the gun case, and he received probation. So that was 10 years ago. And he was the last witness. So that's a wrap up of day 6. Alonzo is the only person I see covering the trial. I actually like to hear that. I love to hear that. There are a few. No, let me just also mention. Yesterday, I was a little disappointed. There was only 5 media there. 5 media. Today it was a little better. There was 8, and then after lunch there were 7. So yeah, it's a little lack of coverage. I say there's a little lack. There should be at least 15 journalists in there like there was on day 1. But the court will be packed next week whenever they do closing statements. I think they're going to be doing closing arguments next Wednesday. The government is silencing street TV. Why would you say that? Government isn't silencing street TV. Oh, you can't hear us? Oh, shoot. They said they can't hear me. Oh, man. Are we losing audio? If we're losing audio, I'm going to wrap this live up then. Spider, you can hear me, Spider? Okay. Hey, Spider, I saw Cowboy today. I told him, I said, Spider on your head like he was with T.I. I straight up told him that today. I had lunch. Well, I sat next to Cowboy today during lunch and chopped it up with him for a little while. I asked him some questions about his store. We talked a little bit about the trial, but I also asked him just about his store and the stuff that he's doing in his new business. I also told him that there's a lot of people going to be on your head, and he brushed it off. He ain't tripping. Okay, my audio is finicky, someone says. I wonder why that is. I'm going to start connecting a mic. I'm going to start connecting a mic to my thing here. It's skipping. So, yeah, that was pretty much a wrap-up for day 6. I apologize for any of the audio skipping. I don't do a whole lot of lives, but I wanted to bring the people all the updates on this Eric Holder stuff. I didn't want people to think that there's some sort of conspiracy or that there's some, shady stuff going on. And also let me tell you that when I'm in court, I talk to the defense attorney. Very willing to talk, willing to answer any question. I talk to the prosecutor, John McKinney. very open to talk, will answer any question. I talked to the detective, Detective Washington. We'll go in the hallway. He'll very willing to talk, answer any question. So there's no feeling that they are trying to mislead us or prevent us from getting information. And all the exhibits and all the stuff from this case will be eventually open to the public by probably next week. By Friday of next week, you can get anything from this trial that you want. And let me also add something about, somebody asked about the camera over the Marathon store. And there has been so much discussion about this camera at the Marathon store. And I don't know if you're still in the room. Oh, how do I make him a moderator? Oh, okay. I think I see it right here. Wait up. Sure. Oh, this is the one I left earlier, huh? Add as a moderator. There we go, Spider. But there's been a lot of talk about this camera that was pointing right above the Marathon store. And I want to acknowledge who asked that question earlier, because I don't remember the name of whoever asked that question. But who wants to know about that camera? Give me a thumbs up if you want to know about the camera. Give me a thumbs down if you don't. I decided to be nosy today and ask about this camera that nobody's asked about. And unbelievably, I got the answers about that camera. And I really wasn't surprised of the answers because it's all related to the lack of cooperation, like the lack of family in this trial. There's none of Nipsey Hussle's families in this trial. So let me tell you what happened with this camera. Apparently, the LAPD immediately found that this camera was there, and when they went to the Marathon store to get it, the owners of the Marathon store were uncooperative. They refused to turn over the footage of that camera. That's according to the detective. So there it is. The detective said he knows for a fact that the camera was working. In the previous video, I assumed that the camera was probably not working. There's so many times you see a camera and find out it doesn't work. So I just assumed it was one of those cameras that didn't work. I was wrong on that. That camera was absolutely working, according to the LAPD, and they just did not get the cooperation from the owners of the Marathon store to retrieve that footage. And apparently that footage is HD and very clear. So there you go. There is that camera footage, at least existed back then. Who knows where it's at now, 3 years later. And the owners of the store did not want to cooperate. I'm getting a message here that my connection is unstable. I got an unstable connection. Please wait while we try to reconnect. I'm on a Wi-Fi signal right here. Give me a thumbs up if the connection appears unstable. Give me a thumbs up if it's unstable to you. Okay, the connection is fine. Good. I'm just getting a little error here. So I'm going to get off in about 15 minutes. I'll take some questions up until that point. But I just wanted to just tap in with everybody and let them know day 6 of testimony is done. There were only 3 witnesses. Well, there were 4 witnesses, but the coroner was ordered to come back. The gang cop, the Detective Washington, and then the paralegal for the prosecution. Cool. And we had a little bit more media presence today. Not a whole lot more. There were 8 present in the morning. There were 7 present in the afternoon, and that's up from 5 yesterday. 5 yesterday, what was that? It was day 5 of testimony. Yesterday was day 5. It was the smallest group of media since this whole trial started. 5 people. But I would like to just also extend that invitation to anybody that's in the Los Angeles area to come to court Tuesday morning. There's no court Monday. Come to court Tuesday morning. I think the judge said, let me give you the start time for Tuesday morning, because sometimes it switches up. 9:30 Tuesday morning. And if you want to see Cowboy testify, Tuesday morning, 9:30, be there. He'll be back in court. Did they recover both weapons? Actually, that's a great question. Let me answer that. Let me go to my notes, because Detective Washington actually was asked about, did he recover those weapons? And he said no. He was asked, was there an effort to try to recover the weapons that Eric Holder used? He said yes. Asked him, what were those efforts? They served a search warrant on Eric Holder's address, and they served a search warrant at his cousin Harold's. Harold was the guy that we first learned about when Bernita testified, that sometimes her and Eric went to Harold's apartment or house because he had a music studio there, and they would hang out, smoke, do music. Well, they served a search warrant at Harold's too, and no gun was recovered at both places. So, nope, the guns that Eric Holder used were never recovered. Alex, do you pay people for interviews? I've never paid for an interview. I've never paid for an interview, and I never charged for an interview. I do it the journalistic way. I remember somebody wanted me to do an interview with them, and the dude actually asked me, "So how much do I got to pay to be on your platform?" I said, I don't charge people. I don't charge people to be on my platform, but apparently a lot of platforms do. But I don't pay, I don't charge. All right, back to this. Did Cowboy ever mention about Eric wanting to do music with Nipsey? The only time Eric Holder's music came up was in the conversation that Nipsey and Eric had, that we learned when Cowboy was testifying. The question was asked to Cowboy after the snitch conversation. We'll just call that the snitch conversation, even though Cowboy says it was paperwork. After the paperwork conversation, what did Eric Holder say next? And that's when he asked about, have you guys, meaning Rimpaw, Cowboy, and Nipsey, listened to my CD? Then the prosecutor asked him, did he actually have a CD on him? And every kind of, brushed him off, saying, "Nah, we ain't heard your music." They wasn't messing with his music. That's the only time his music came up so far. Man, we got some spammers in here, man. Naked HD. Get rid of that dude if you can, Spider. Naked HD. That's the first time I think I've ever seen a spammer in my like a real spammer in my life. Cowboy snitching. Stupid cuz. Hey, somebody's gonna make a shirt and they're gonna put stupid cuz on it. That's gonna become like an iconic phrase that Cowboy said in court. Stupid cuz. And then somebody's actually going to name themselves that. A youngster's gonna call himself that. Stupid cuz. DA said Eric Holder was also an up-and-coming rapper, not successful. Yeah. Yeah, and if you want to know what the DA and the defense attorney said in opening statements, I was the first one to get that footage and post it to the internet in its entirety, in HD, in full HD. There's one other platform that eventually posted it, but they didn't put it in full HD. But you can go to the channel and you can listen to McKinney's opening statements, which is about an hour, and then Jansen's opening statements for the defense, which is about, I don't know, 15 minutes maybe. OG Steve. Salute to OG Steve. Yeah, Rimpau did come back. Let's clear that up. I think that there's some belief that Rimpau ran and never came back. That is untrue. Both Rimpau and Shermy Villanueva both ran, but they both ran in different directions. Shermy ran towards the west entrance on Slauson, and Rimpau ran out of the east entrance on Slauson. But they both immediately came back. So I don't hold anything against those two brothers for preserving their lives. I would have felt a certain kind of way if they ran off and never came back, but they both came back. No, DJ Gary, we spoke about Rimpau. He did not show up. He is not in custody, and they issued a $500,000 warrant, a bench warrant for his arrest, $500,000. And as of when Detective Washington took the stand, he said, as of a couple minutes ago, we were still looking for him. So the way that Detective Washington testified, he said they're on it. It really sounds like over the weekend they're gonna get him. That's the way it sounds like we're on it. We're doing everything we can do to get him into custody. Was it established what was going on inside the Marathon store at the time of the murder besides Cowboy eating? Dre Dizzy, man, that is actually an incredible question. What was going on in the Marathon store other than Cowboy going there to eat? Well, the only way we would know is if there was a witness to come to court. So we don't know. And no one came to court from the Marathon store. And the detective made it very clear that no one from the Marathon store is cooperating, except for Cowboy, of course. No one wanted to cooperate. No one wants to participate. And so we don't know what was going on in the Marathon store at that time. Dig into that March 2012 case, Josie asks. Well, you know what? I think that March 2012 case is very interesting. And I'm going to just throw up that case number one more time for anybody that's interested in it. I do want to dig into it, but I just currently don't have the time. But any of you guys that are, researchers, case number SA 080407. And that's the cases that begin with SA are usually out of the airport courthouse. So that's the March 28th, 2012 case of Eric Holder getting arrested in Marina Del Rey by the sheriff's deputy for possession of a gun and possession of some illegal substance. But I would definitely, and let me give you one more number. His booking number was 3100976. 3100976. That's his booking number. This is back in 2012. So, when I get some time, I'll look into it. But for anybody that wants to jump on that right now, feel free to do so. I think it might be worth, it might be worth the information it yields. Who knows? DJ Academics talking about Nipsey shouldn't have said what he said, and Eric was provoked, pretty much siding with the defense. Well, I partially agree. I don't think that anybody should be addressing whether somebody's snitching unless they're ready for all the heat, all the smoke. You shouldn't address anybody else's snitching unless you're ready for that smoke. Especially, face to face. You're addressing somebody face to face. Nah, you ain't never gonna get me to address somebody snitching face to face. I know it could come from that. Even if I'm strapped, I know it can come from that. If he's strapped, I'm strapped. It's, that's just a recipe for disaster. I leave it alone. Trust me, where I live, there are snitches. I personally know people telling, people informing. I just stay away from them. I'm not gonna get in their face, say, "Hey, man, you can't be around here. Go clear up your pay." I kind of agree with what DJ Academic said, but I don't think that he's siding with the defense. You could believe that he shouldn't have did that and still also believe it's a first-degree murder. Alex, I thought they said Holder did 180 days in jail for that gun charge. From what I heard today, he received probation for that gun charge because it was his first offense. Let me see here. It says here 3 years or 5 years probation. Count one dismissed, and he pled to the other charge, received the felony conviction, and received 3 to 5 years probation. I didn't hear that he did 180 days for it. Unless he stayed in custody for 180 days until this case was over. That's possible. Maybe he sat in jail for while this case. You know what? We don't know if he bailed out on this case or if he stayed in custody. But you could easily look that up. I'm about to close this out in a couple of minutes. If Shitty would have swung on Nip, them order fits. I think Nipsey had to conduct himself in the hood. I think that Nipsey got to a point where he really felt, that he could address it. And I think he would have done that even if he wasn't famous. I think that was just him. 90% of the time, it's just going to be a fade. In most hoods, 90% of the time, that's going to end up in the fade. But there are some hoods that's going to end up in play. When there's a chance, if there's a 5% chance that could end up in gunplay, that's enough for me to never go down that road. But, some people are willing to roll the dice. His bail was $600,000. He ain't bail out. I don't know what his bail was for that 2012 case. That wasn't even mentioned. And if it was, I missed it. All right, people. I want to thank everybody for tapping in on this update, this day 6 of the Eric Holder trial update. I'll be back at it. Tuesday will be day 7 of testimony. And then tomorrow and the next couple of days, I'm going to give some updates of some of the other days that I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about day 1, 2, 3, days 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to bring you Cowboy's testimony and Bernita's testimony. Those two testimonies were the most interesting that I haven't covered so far. So I'll try to drop that tomorrow or Saturday. And I appreciate everybody tapping in with Street TV. And then I dropped the Street and Scholars episode 19 podcast today with FG, where most of our conversation was about this case. So please go tap in the Streets and Scholars podcast on all platforms, all podcast platforms. Just type Streets and Scholars, and we talk about this case in detail, specifically about running, Rim Paul running, and sharing about this case. So thanks again for tapping in. Thanks, Spider, for moderating. I appreciate you. We got to connect next week on another episode of Facts Over Feelings. That's another podcast that's already up. There's 2 episodes. Go check that out. Facts Over Feelings with Spider Loke. That's on all podcast platforms. Go check that out. And I'm out.